Greetings all. I hope you're all doing well. Today I'm going to expand a bit upon my family history, starting with my maternal side of the family. So to take it all the way to the beginning, a fun fact is that my maternal ancestors were actually 1820 settlers. Now, if you don't know about that, that was during 1820. It was, of course, after the Napoleonic Wars, where in Britain there was a lot of unemployment among, the British people, among ex-soldiers, blacksmiths, carpenters, farmers, the like, and mass unemployment. So the British government devised a scheme to send a number of thousand settlers down to the Albany area on the Eastern Cape of South Africa, from Liverpool by ship and a number of ships to the Eastern Cape, and that's where my family comes in. So we are from the 18. We are directly descended. I am directly descended from Richard Forrester, who was an 1820 settler. Now, Richard's family, the Forresters, were English. They had their origins in Scotland, but they had been in England for a long time, around Burnslim, Staffordshire, that area. And Richard had married Mary Pitt, his first wife, and they had 4 children. There was John, Joseph, Sarah, and Lydia. And they embarked on this great adventure, but also this adventure for a better life, a better opportunity in the Eastern Cape, on board the ship John, which was one of those ships that carried all these 1820 settlers from England to South Africa. And they were under the leadership of Samuel Liversidge, who was in charge of their party, and specifically in charge of the ship, all the people on the board the ship John. So he was in charge of, escorting these people to the Eastern Cape and leading them in creating a new society in the Eastern Cape. And anyway, that's how they got to be in South Africa. My 4 times great grandfather, Richard Forrester, was known as quite a kind and generous, compassionate man, a very good neighbour, friendly, and a very affectionate, loving father, husband, and grandfather to his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. And that's where, he lived in the Eastern Cape. He died in Grahamstown. He was a farmer. Unfortunately, he had quite a few challenges back then, with being a farmer on the frontier of the Eastern Cape, dealing with invasions by the Xhosa tribes and droughts, floods, and etc. Basically, all the challenges of being British settlers in a new colony, about a billion times different from what was from cool, rainy, cold England. They obviously had to adjust a bit to the environment, but they did well and they thrived. All the settlers thrived there, and especially my family. And this leads me on to my next ancestor, John Forrester. He married a woman. He married a woman called Elizabeth Sanson, who was born at sea on another ship, the Albany, which another 1820 settler ship. So she was born at sea, and anyway, they, being both 1820 settlers themselves, they got married, and they had a number of children. One of them was Henry George Forrester, who went on to marry Leonora Alice Tarr. Again, they were born in the Eastern Cape, but they both descended from British 1820 settler families. They had 4 sons. One of them was my great grandfather, William John Forrester. He was known as Jack, so he was commonly called Jack Forrester, but it was Jack, Percy, Cromwell, and Raymond. And those 4 brothers and their families moved up to, in the the early 1900s, they moved up to what is now known today as Kenya, and which a few years after it had been claimed by the Crown and become a British colony. I think it was first the British East Africa Protectorate, and then it became the Kenya colony. And yeah, that's where my grandfather settled. My grandfather and his brothers tried farming, and then went on to manage a store at Rumuruti, which was basically like a merchant store selling things, an artisan's way of life, and that's where that's where Jack Forrester met my great grandmother, his wife, Erna Ogilvie, who was actually from Scotland, and she was from from aristocracy. She was from the Scottish Ogilvie clan. She was directly related to the Earls of Airlie Castle, which is in Angus in the Scottish Highlands. And those of you who are knowledgeable about Scottish clans and Scottish history and Scotland in general will know about them. So that was quite fascinating for us to find out. Sorry. And so she married my great grandfather, Jack Forrester. They had 2 children, David Forrester and Hilda Thelma Forrester, who was my grandmother. And now my grandmother, she went by the name Thelma. She was born and raised in Kenya, and her whole life that's where she met my maternal grandfather, Neil Pearson, who was the son of British settlers to Kenya, and they got married in Kenya. And that's where they had my mother and her aunt as their 2 daughters. And then they lived through. So that part of my maternal family lived through all the chaos and the change of in those days of Kenya, with the Mau Mau rebellion. My grandfather, Neil Pearson, served in the Kenya regiment. He's actually got his medal for serving against the Mau Mau terrorists. Serving in the Kenya regiment amongst the Mau Mau terrorists. And so I'll show that. I've got the medal with me to this very day, so I'll show it to you when I get the chance. But basically, that's how it was after the rebellion and after Kenyan independence. My grandparents and my mother and her sister moved down to Rhodesia, where they settled in an area on a patch of farmland called Concession, which people know that today. And I think they arrived in the 60s. They arrived here in Rhodesia, immigrated here, and settled. And they both were police both my grandparents were police reservists in the British South Africa Police, which was the police force of Rhodesia and one of the Rhodesian security forces. And and both my maternal grandparents have passed away, sadly, as is the way of life. They both passed away in this country. And my mother, my father, myself, my sisters, my family, we are proud Zimbabweans. We are Africans. I was born here, we were born here, we were born in Africa. Africa is our home, and it is our greatest honour to protect, serve and help the wildlife of our stunningly beautiful country. And for all Zimbabwe's challenges, I'm grateful to live in one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, which is such a wildlife haven, with well renowned for our Big Five, and for our wildlife. So I would definitely not live anywhere else. This is my home, and I'm grateful for explaining some of my maternal family's history. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again for part 2.